To be honest, I did almost give up because I actually got turned down by 80% of the company that I spoke to. Many of them told me that I was being completely unrealistic, but that was the whole point. It was to be complicated, it was to be different from the rest of the wellness beverage brands out there, because if I wasn't going to disrupt the market, what the hell was the point?
No Bullshit Talks is a podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. There's too much bullshit out there, especially when it comes to business. This podcast aims to highlight what's true and what's not in the world of entrepreneurship, bringing you honest and raw conversations about the roller coaster that is entrepreneurship. Each week, my guest will be a high-performing entrepreneur sharing the ups and downs of their journey and helping you prepare for the road ahead, while providing you with actionable insights and absolute gems of knowledge. Stay tuned as I introduce this week's guest.
Jenna Zhang is the founder of Sipzen, a range of lightly sparkling functional teas rooted in traditional Chinese medicine. After being told that she had PCOS and Hashimoto's, Jenna turned to the herbal remedies of her childhood, healed herself, and built a brand from that experience to help others do the same. I present to you this week's guest, Jenna Zhang.
Jenna, welcome to No Bullshit Talks today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm really excited to get talking about your business and what you do, but I love to butcher intros, so I'm going to let you do it because I think you've got a lot of strings to your bow as well. So I want you to introduce yourself. Why don't you tell your audience?
Hi everyone, I'm Jenna and I'm the founder of Sipzen, which is a Chinese traditional medicine inspired wellness beverage brand here in the UK, and we are going global soon. But yeah, it's based off of my own health story, and yeah.
Cool. Okay, so I don't know where to start. I feel like, do we start with that health story? I think we should start with the health story because I feel like it's that, your origin story in a way, and it's why Sipzen was created in the first place. So maybe we should start with that. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so about 3 years ago now, I was diagnosed with both PCOS and Hashimoto's, which is better known as underactive thyroid. And unfortunately, in Western medicine, the only options you really have are Synthroid, Ozempic, or birth control pills. I didn't really feel like going bald for the sake of, weight loss because basically what we have is insulin resistance. And so I grew up Chinese American, and I've always believed in Chinese traditional medicine, which I think a lot of people have a misconception of it. I think people think it's old wives' tales as opposed to like 3,500 years worth of data of how the human body reacts to botanicals. So when I went back to China to visit some family, I went to see a Chinese traditional doctor, and he obviously gave the very traditional prescription. They come in like these paper boxes basically, and they're filled with herbs, and it worked really well. But the issue with TCM is you have to brew it yourself. It smells up the house. You have to do it every day. It's incredibly inconvenient. It tastes like absolute dirt. And frankly, here in Europe, it's just not available. I think that, there is a Chinese medicine institution here in London, but from what I've read, their courses run from like 10 months, whereas in China, it takes like 10 years. It's the same as, Western medicine school. So in China, there are two forms of med school. There's traditional and then there's modern. Both are as prestigious. But yeah, I went through a 3-month course and basically lost all the weight that I had gained during my diagnosis. And my health is essentially back to normal. It's I'm able to maintain all my symptoms and just kind of keep it at a steady pace, and all without, taking synthetic stuff, which I really didn't want to do. And I just realized that, the West is very uneducated on Chinese traditional medicine, all whilst culturally appropriating it. Mm-hmm. So I decided to do it myself and frankly do it a bit better. And so Sipzen isn't just a beverage brand. Sipzen very much is like a cultural mix. So I wanted it to be something that would kind of bridge the West into complementary medicine. I'm not one of those people that say herbs cure cancer. Please don't do that. Western medicine, modern medicine very much saves lives, but TCM is a really good preventative measure, and it's good as a complementary. And also, I wanted to make it delicious, right? Because part of the reasons why the West doesn't believe in it a lot of times is the bias due to how things taste or smell. And so I wanted it to make it a bit more modern almost. And so I took the formula, I asked the doctors that I go to for a formula that would be good for both men and women for daily use. And so then I took it to a lab here in the UK and have them develop it into a cold brew sparkling drink.
Wow. That's a lot of effort to go to find a solution for yourself. I feel like it's funny because when I think of Chinese herbal medicine, I do think of some crazy old Chinese lady who's trying to tell you that they can cure you, and they're just like, you must take this, and I even think of some of my relatives and talking about all these different things that they know that they can cure us, and you're sort of like doctors don't really believe in that, and it is that kind of that I guess we don't believe what they're saying, And do you know what? It's not for any particular reason. It's just because of how they come across. And I think they might come across as some eccentric little old lady who's kind of doing that, but they've got the years of experience, but it's not been communicated properly. And I think that's the difference.
Well, there's also this issue of a lot of the Chinese traditional medicine shops or apothecaries here. They're not run by people who are trained in TCM, and so they're also kind of harming the whole reputation of TCM because it's not really regulated here because it takes years and a lot of practice to become a full-time TCM doctor in China. And so when I see someone, here that's selling all these powdered mushrooms and herbs out of their shop, I question it, and that was the issue for me, is I couldn't even find the stuff that I needed, even though I had a written formula from my doctor back in China. So I thought the easiest thing to do was genuinely come up with a drink that was for daily use and maintenance.
Amazing. So I want to hear more about Sipzen then itself, because like you said, you've made essentially a sparkling tea to help solve all the problems that you had. And so how do you go from I have PCOS, I have Hashimoto's, I'm not happy with Western medicine at the moment, I know something's better, I want to educate the UK and obviously Western market, to actually then producing a physical product?
So basically, I've always wanted to work for myself, but I didn't know exactly how it was going to happen. But I think it kind of just fell in my lap. I did it very organically. So I had the idea, came up with the name. If you look at the logo, right, you see that it's a red stamp. So I knew that I wanted to look like one of those Chinese red stamps that go on scrolls, which is the original version of signatures. And I slowly just I got myself a ticket to a trade drink show, met a bunch of development companies that essentially help drink companies launch, from idea to procurement to the first batch of sample manufacturing to then label design. Spoke to a few, and to be honest, I did almost give up because I actually got turned down by 80% of the company that I spoke to. Many of them told me that I was being completely unrealistic and that it was impossible to do.
What was so unrealistic about what you wanted to do?
So the thing is, it wasn't actually impossible. It was just that these development companies essentially get paid the exact same per project. And obviously, I wanted to put in a bit more ingredients than the other companies, but that was the whole point. It was to be complicated. It was to be different from the rest of the wellness beverage brands out there, because if I wasn't going to disrupt the market, what the hell was the point? And so I finally found one that was very willing to take me on and my personality and all my demands. And so I reached out to them. I bought a website on GoDaddy. And to be completely honest with you, I've never worked in FMCG. So the very first thing I did was genuinely ChatGPT. I was okay, obviously I know I have to go to company's house and register and all of this, and and basically ChatGPT scraped I guess stories or podcasts and articles about other drinks companies I've launched, like Trip and Dirt Tea, and exactly who they worked with. So I then through that was able to make a list of the process that I needed. So it was the procurement team, then it was the distributors, the label designers, then you have to get compliance for label designers. And so I worked mainly with this one company based in Leicester to help develop the recipe. And then I was was lucky enough to find my graphic designer, who is amazing, and she's a freelancer. So she did all my labels, and then I have a really close friend in China who is actually a traditional Chinese scroll painter. It's what she does for a living. So I called her and said, I have this idea. I'm going to launch with 3 products. Would you mind actually making me 3 paintings, and I'm going to have it on my drinks? And she said, yeah, absolutely. I told her exactly what Sipzen is about, how I wanted the vibe to look, and she obviously did an amazing job, and the cans look absolutely beautiful. And then I wanted, kind of just to make it feel like a scroll. So then I decided to get my labels to be made from cotton, which actually is more sustainable. And then from each step, but I learned there were positives and negatives along the way. I mean, one of the major positives is someone Christoph, my consultant, who's now turned on my advisory board. He was one of the best decisions I ever made in terms of strategy and how we sell. But I've also had a lot of negatives. I mean, being a young female, in business, people do try to take advantage of you. People don't take you seriously. And I think there's also a lot of cultural bias because people, I think, look at me and think, okay, where's, young Asian female, like, where is she getting this money from to start this company? And so I think a lot of people thought it was mommy, daddy's money and passion project, which could not be further from the truth. And so there were a lot of issues I was taken advantage of by several, marketing companies, etc. And and then I just slowly built it over the course of a year and a half.
We're going to come back to all that stuff, because I want to hear more about the products first before we kind of go into all the dramas that have it. And I want to get our cans out because we've got some, right? I'm so excited to drink this. And I just want to say, the way it feels, because you said cotton, right?
Yeah.
It feels amazing. It's actually just nice to touch as well. And I think, you said you wanted to stand out. I think you do. I think they look classy. I think they look stylish. I think the artwork is impeccable. And it does feel like a really nice product. So I'm going to have a taste.
Yeah. So this is one of the things about the design. Originally, the design was very different because I had multiple designers kind of pitch me their idea. And I'm going to be completely honest, most of them pitched what was already on the shelves. Pastel colors, neon colors, bubble letters.
How are you defining yourself? Because you mentioned earlier Trip and Dirty. They are very trendy with my audience. I love them both as brands. I think they do really, really well. But that's what their branding is. It's very much that same sort of way. So if they're going to pitch this exact same thing, how are you going to differentiate?
Well, this is my thing, is Trip was technically the first to go pastel. So it worked for them. Yeah. So that was genius of them at the time. But now every brand has followed Trip suit, which is why Trip is so successful. But I knew, the whole point I wanted to start this company was there was actually so many other brands on the shelves that was taking inspiration from TCM, but not giving credit where credit was due. So, for example, the use of ginseng, goji berries, cordyceps, that all comes from Chinese traditional medicine. I mean, that's stuff that we grew up with soup, right? And so I knew, okay, so I'm not kidding. I actually one day, because my designer asked me, she was like, you need to give me a color palette. You need to figure this out. So I actually went to every single supermarket near me. We're talking Waitrose, Whole Foods, Planet Organic, Bailey & Sage, Sainsbury's, Tesco's, Aldi's, any brand you could possibly think of. And I stood there in front of the can shelf, both alcoholic and non-alcoholic, and I just stared. And I was like, okay, the white ones don't work, and Bright's already doing that. Pastel, forget about it. And then I realized the reason they all kind of come off the same, even if it's slightly different color palette, is because they're all digitally printed cans. So I was like, okay, I want to go label. But I said I wanted to do Chinese, so there's one option, scroll paper. And so then I genuinely just kind of, and then I thought to myself, okay, there's no point figuring out a color palette and then having my friend make a painting that wouldn't look authentic. So I let her come up with the paintings on her own. and I was like, do whatever you feel is right, that matches this theme, and exactly what I described to you in terms of what kind of, drinks brand I want to do. And obviously she herself is Chinese and takes traditional Chinese medicine, so she understands. She made the paintings, and then we digitalized it so that we could put it on labels. And then from those paintings, I was able to figure out the color palette. And then I basically told the label designer, right, I do not want it to look like anything on the shelves. It needs to look like a scroll painting. And frankly, how do I put this? You can copy someone's pastel colors. You can copy someone's, bubble letters easily. But good luck trying to copy a scroll painting. And so that was kind of my thought.
I mean, you say that, but now with AI, it won't take someone very long. And actually, if they do, then it means you're onto something. If you find that someone's got a Sipzen knockoff soon, then that's a huge flattery moment. It means that you have disrupted the market. It means that people want to be like you. So, and we talked about this just before we came on the podcast. You said imitation is the greatest form of flattery because there's someone out there ripping off my ideas, and this is what happens. And you're onto something. As soon as people start taking your ideas, you're onto something.
Exactly.
But it will be difficult because, like you said, people can do AI representation of this, but it won't be authentic. And like you said, you're made from cotton, it's supposed to be sustainable, like that's important to you. You guys are also B Corp, right?
Yes, so we are fully registered B Corp. So we donate a portion of our proceeds to a charity up in the Scottish Highlands. And it's, something that's dear to me. I wanted it to be very, very sustainable. And also, conscious consumerism is continuously growing. Yeah. And I wanted to enter the market ahead of the curve. Yeah. Because otherwise I was just going to be another drink on the market. Yeah. And then obviously all of our material is sustainable. I also only produce in full batches, meaning in terms of like the supply MOQ. And so a lot of times you have to throw out the raw ingredients once you've made your full batches, whatever is left. And so I have a recipe card where I figure out exactly how much I can order in whole numbers so that there's as minimal waste as possible. And obviously all of our packaging is sustainable. It's forever recyclable aluminum. I also only work with suppliers who are either B Corp themselves or have another kind of sustainability certificate. And so we became B Corp because of it.
I love that. And because that's obviously the same sort of thing I've always had with our agency and with Knobs itself. Like we work with sustainable brands and we're very much all along those lines, and it's important to us. And so obviously having brands who align with that sort of thing is important. But that didn't just start with Sipzen, did it? Because you've got experience in this sector.
Yeah. So my first real job out of university, so I graduated unfortunately during COVID. I graduated online, and I knew I was going to go to law school and whatnot and do a master's, but I then got scooped up by an amazing mentor who was a hedge fund manager turned basically sustainability startup founder as this kind of pre-retirement passion project. And originally when I started out with them, they were a crowdfunding platform for carbon credits. But then I helped start their sister company and what that was is we created this like Tableau platform that was like the biggest in the world at the time, not sure about now because I left a few years ago. But the carbon offsetting market basically took off during COVID, but it wasn't very regulated. It was mainly voluntary market, and so there was a lot of issues, and especially with credibility, so like double counting, and there were quite a few scandals. So what the platform did was it would basically we scraped the internet and every kind of data possible about every kind of carbon credit, every project, every owner, every verifier, every buyer, and every transaction. And it was an automated platform that basically allows you to do due diligence on carbon credits. And it was something I was very passionate about. Now, I am not a coder. I am not a tech person at all. I was essentially the legal researcher. And then eventually, I started out as an intern for the mother company, and then I became head of legal research. And then I got turned into COO.
Oh, wow.
And I was, I think, 23, 24, managing a whole office. So that was quite an experience. But I honestly learned a lot, and I couldn't be more grateful for the opportunity that was offered to me there. Like, becoming head of operations at that age, I learned so much more than I think probably anyone else at that age.
So tell me what you did. Like, as a COO, you're in charge of everything. You're in charge of a team, but you're in charge of all the systems. Like, as a business owner, how is that translated? What are the biggest things you've learned from that role that's translated to your business?
Well, because it was a startup, and when I entered, I think it was like 4 people. And originally, it started out as the founder's like garage in Richmond. But by the time I left, and I think in total worldwide, there was about 20 of us. And so I had to do everyone's payroll. I had to come up with their position names. I was in charge of all the interns. I wrote recommendation letters. Like, one of the things I'm proudest of is one of my former interns, I wrote her recommendation letter to Bocconi.
Oh, wow.
And she went.
Wow.
And then, I had to tell people who were much, much older than me, and at the time, frankly, didn't take me seriously, what to do. And I was basically, because it's a startup, it wasn't just like you were doing operations. Like, you had to take on multiple roles. And so I was still doing the legal research and the regulatory compliance and all of that whilst doing operations. And because I think I'm good with people, I'm good with the way I speak, I also, took on sales. So in terms of the big corporate sales, we had some pretty major clients within the oil space that were trying to become more sustainable. They were all under my sales account. And so there was a lot of business trips, a lot of trade shows and conferences, especially for, things like COP. And so I think at one point, I was working probably 90-hour week because I was taking calls from, Chevron in Texas. And then the next morning I was taking not really, it was pre-dawn. I was taking calls from Mitsubishi in Tokyo. Wow. And so it was like the first full-time job, and it was full hands on deck. But it taught me a lot in terms of starting this company because I know how the visa system works in terms of, employment visa, dealing with HMRC. That is a big one. And just, in terms of cutting costs and saving as a company, where you can cut costs, where you should spend more money, how marketing works. And probably one of the biggest things I learned is spotting red flags in people and who to trust.
Ooh, tell me some of those.
So I feel like because it was my first job and I grew up in New York City, and I was quite active growing up. Even at university, I was a full-time athlete. I was a sorority president. Like, I did all the very cliche stereotype stuff. I felt like I could handle people until I actually went into the workforce. And I essentially became this 60-year-old guy's boss. And there was a whole scheme to undermine me and remove me from office, etc. Because I think me being his boss genuinely just hurt his pride. That's all it was. And so, I don't know, I think just dealing with that and being very political with all of it taught me a lot of patience, but also not oversharing. Because I think because I grew up American, I can sometimes overshare and, think that everyone's trustworthy. But that experience genuinely taught me to kind of keep things in and be more introverted when it comes to business, and just be careful who you trust. And obviously, you know about also the incident we had with the digital marketing company.
We'll definitely come to that in a minute. I definitely will. But I do want to talk about the age thing, because I think that's something that a lot of founders are struggling with, is that like lots of founders, I swear, are getting younger and younger every day, right? There's everyone's starting their own business of some kind, but if you want to hire good quality people and you want to find people with experience, then a lot of the time they'll be older than you. Because if you're trying to find, if you have the mindset of I want to hire A players, a lot of those A players need to have a certain number of years of experience to become A players, right? So you're often going to be managing people who are older than you. Now, they might also be older than you, but they also might be men. And a lot of the time, older men don't necessarily respond well to younger women being their bosses, like you said, and telling them what to do. How have you managed to handle that? Because I think that's a difficulty for a lot of women, especially out there, but also even young men who have got older people as bosses, like gaining respect. How do they do it?
Well, the most difficult thing is a lot of times these issues surface because you can feel it. Like, it's a gut feeling, or people throw, backhanded comments, or they just want to undermine everything you do, even though it's not wrong, or they take ideas from you, etc. And it comes in all forms. And the hardest thing is probably like proving it to HR, right? And proving it to management that, this is actually happening. It's not just in your head. You're not being crazy. Because I think that was another issue, is a lot of times people like to say that girls in the workforce, just like in relationships, are being crazy.
They're being emotional.
They're being emotional. They're being crazy. They're, being the B word. Yeah. But that's not true. I think a lot of times, people do things just below the line until you explode. And so my biggest thing was genuinely record everything. I will record calls. I even, till this day, every day I record my exact activities and what I've done at work and what I've completed and what I didn't complete, but is like halfway there. And so I started basically recording everything, and just making myself almost like very transparent, and then keeping a straight face at work, not showing too much of my my personality, and then kind of using that as like proof that I get things done.
It's so difficult though, because when I'm listening to that, I was like, I don't want to be different at work. I just want to be me. And especially if you're the founder, right? Because most people who are listening to this or watching this, hi, I feel like, they're entrepreneurs, they're founders, they're running their own business. So they can't necessarily go to HR and report this. Obviously, they might have HR, but a lot of people are small teams.
Yeah.
And so they've got to just deal with this dynamics. And I would hate as a founder that I have to be someone I'm not, or dampen my own personality. And I've got kind of a big personality. If I dampen it, it's still going to be pretty big. So it's like, I'm going to struggle with that. And so I worry, and the whole recording everything, it sounds like I do quite paranoid. And I feel like that's the lawyer in you coming out, right? Yeah. It's like you record everything, get the evidence. But it's hard. It
is really, really hard. And honestly, it's quite tiring because you know me personally. I can have quite a big personality. I'm quite silly. And, I think I'm a jokester, and, not everyone likes a sense of humor. So yeah, it is really, really difficult, but I think time will tell with these kind of things. I think we're in the really weird generation where our parents were part of this very sexist community where women stay at home, men go to work. We're in that weird generation where women still have the female, traditionally female jobs of being the caretaker, cooking, laundry, etc. And we naturally take it on because it's what we watched our mothers do. So regardless of how big of a feminist you are, it just naturally comes to you. But at the same time, we have to compete at work and we have to climb the corporate ladder. And so I think time will kind of adjust things because, I also entered a workforce with an older generation that came from that, women didn't have a choice era. And so to see me in the office was probably a shock to them.
Yeah.
I think time will probably change things.
But you didn't start off like that. You started off as a lawyer. That's what I'm saying. That's the lawyer in you coming out. You started off in law. So how did you go? You obviously went to law school and then you obviously got that job in the carbon credits fund, and then you've gone and started your own business. But what made you do law in the first place? And then how did you change?
So it's interesting you asked that, plus the conversation we just had, because I entered law out of self-protection. I mean, granted, I'm not a very maths person, so I was never going to go down the doctor route. And I grew up with quite traditional Chinese parents, so there's only a few options out there for me.
So I did a medical degree and then a law degree. Exactly. So I mean, and then accounting, exactly. Just to add all the professions that you're allowed to do.
I had the choices of doing finance, medicine, but I'm squeamish. Engineering or law.
Yeah, engineering. And also, I think teaching is quite a respected profession in the. I feel like it's if you become like a professor.
But I don't like teaching, to be honest. Like the constant standing up and talking. Also, I don't think people realize how long the hours are to be a teacher. Yeah, people think the job stops at 3. No, they grade till like 2 a.m.
I mean, I still teach on the side as well. So I do, exactly. and it's long, and I'm exhausted, and I teach in primary schools as well as in lecturing universities, and it's just both ends of the
spectrum. It's bad, and I mean, I'm nowhere near what you do. I give maybe Chinese lessons on Preply like twice a week, and I just feel like I can't breathe.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, I went into law because out of self-protection, for various reasons. Growing up a minority immigrant in the States and how, the politics really shifted. Because I majored mainly in politics at university, and I wanted to become a politician. And I still do. I just think I'm taking more of the business route to it. And then, did the whole law school scene, and I grew up with divorced parents. I saw how messy that got. I also saw in politics how unjust things can be, especially with American laws. And then just in general, I just feel like day to day, I was always a bit scared of how things worked, didn't know where things stand. And then, I got my first speeding ticket at 18 and had to go to court. And just through every life experience, I just realized that the one thing everyone really needs to know is how to protect themselves. Yeah. And I grew up in South Brooklyn, right? I grew up in a place called Bensonhurst, which, if you guys look it up, it is famous for mafia hitmen by the Italians. Like, it is known for that. And so I grew up I went to a high school that was in, Flatbush, Brooklyn, which is also known to be really bad. And I feel like I grew up in an environment that was very fight or flight. And it was fight or flight. And, a lot of the kids in my high school ended up in juvie or prison. And it's because they didn't know how to protect themselves, and they didn't understand how the world worked, and it was just quite an unfortunate environment. And so, starting in high school, I was like, I don't want to end up like that. I need to do something with myself, at the same time protect myself, because, you don't hear it now, because I took speaking lessons, but I used to have the deepest South Brooklyn accent.
Oh, do it for me. I
want to hear it. So I can't say chocolate. It's chocolate.
Oh, do a whole full sentence. I want to hear this.
What do you want to say?
I don't know anything.
Like the most common thing is I'm walking here.
Is it like when you say coffee?
Coffee. Yeah, I say coffee.
Coffee.
And so I took voice lessons because I was like, I don't want to go out into the world and be, regardless if I'm like Harvard grad or whatever it is, people are going to hear your accent in an interview and judge you. So I wanted to be different, and not different, but change my destiny. And so I thought, one of the probably most stable ways to do that would be law.
Interesting. I never heard anyone think about changing their profession because of, the way they speak and the kind of image they have. Like, I know that, I come from Birmingham in the UK, which has got famously probably the worst possible accent you could have in the entire world. It's known to be the worst possible accent, and you maybe not hear it in me now, but a couple of drinks in, it comes strongly.
I've heard it before.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think I'm not hiding it. I've done public speaking. I'm LAMDA trained, right? So I'm naturally. I've never had a very, very strong accent, but when I get emotional or I get drunk, that's when it's really strong, right? But people they immediately think you're stupid. Yeah. And when you're a woman, like you said, or when you're a minority woman, you already have so many more standards to
Exactly.
go about and so much more to prove that I guess you don't want another thing to be thrown against you that, oh, she speaks badly too, because, you know. And
Yeah,
that's
exactly. And that was the thing, is I was already an immigrant. I'm a minority. You know, I don't come from like this grand family money. And I grew up in South Brooklyn. My legal address is, you know, Bensonhurst. There was just so much kind of working against me in a way where the first impression that I enter the room, like, you know, if I was to say interview for a big law firm, chances are they would have picked someone else if I didn't kind of almost perfect my image. And I know it sounds really bad, and people are always like, you should be proud of this, you should be proud of that. I'm absolutely proud that I'm immigrant. I'm incredibly proud that I'm Chinese, I'm a minority female, and, you know, I'm incredibly grateful for my parents for the sacrifices they made so that I could have a Western education. But push comes to shove, if I had to apply for a company job. I had to graduate with everyone else. I had to go for university interviews in the most random suburban neighborhoods I've never stepped foot in. So in New York State, there are 3 parts, right? You have upstate New York, which is a giant triangle. Exactly. Then you have Long Island, right? And then you have this tiny, tiny dot of the 5 boroughs, which is New York City. And people don't know this, but upstate and Long Island are very, very conservative and not very diverse. And when obviously I applied to university for scholarships, and the university I ended up going to, I remember I had to go for an interview with one of the alumni, and she lived like deep into Long Island, like wealthy Long Island. And I think it was like a month's worth of my babysitting money for me to even get a cab there and back. And when I entered like her house, I was 17 at the time. It was probably one of the biggest houses I've ever seen in my life. And, you know, she had a very, very different accent to mine. And I was just so shy and terrified. And I think that was like one of the times where it just clicked in my head, figure it out or you're forever going to be a prey. Wow. And I mean, this is kind of funny, but I think it's like a really good analogy. But for anyone who's watched Bridgerton,
yeah, I've just finished the 4th season yesterday, so
you know what? Can I just say I'm really mad I wasn't hired. Like,
Sadie Beck was brilliant though.
Yes, but like I could have been one of the sisters.
Oh, you could have been.
I could have been Posey.
I was gonna say Posey was a nice one. Don't do me the other one.
Yeah. Like, you know, the season 1, where they kind of giving flashbacks of how Lady Danbury came to be who she is whilst helping the Duke of Hastings. Yeah. And there was a scene where she visited him and realized he isn't dead. And she said to him, when I was a girl, I used to shiver at my own reflection, blah, blah. And then one day I just decided, fine, if I'm going to be scared of my own reflection, I'm going to make everyone else scared as well. And so every room I walk into, I want to be number 1. I want all eyes on me. I want X, Y, Z. And so, yeah, I literally went from the nerdiest. I mean, I was always an athlete. I did diving growing up. But I went from, like, this really, really quiet, odd New York accent. Also, can I just say, looking back at my childhood videos, it is weird. Like, even I find it weird. Because the deep New York accent comes from Italian heritage, like Southern Italian heritage. But I was the only Asian kid in an Italian neighborhood at the time. When you look at it, it's like, why does this girl sound like that? Because I used to sound like, you know, the movie My Cousin Vinny? Yeah. That was how I used to sound. But, like, obviously I don't look Italian. I'm not Italian. Yeah. It was really weird. And so I decided to change it.
Wow, so you like channeling your inner Lady Danbury.
Exactly. And like, I couldn't even afford vocal lessons, like speaking lessons and or speech. So I went on YouTube.
Oh, really? So you're using all the modern day tools that everyone's talking about. So you said you've helped create your business with ChatGPT, and you help elocution lessons with YouTube. You are using the everyday kind of modern day technology.
I do believe in the American saying, pull yourself up by the bootstrap.
Yeah.
No one is going to change your story or your destiny for you. That's on you.
Wow. And actually, you know, you were saying earlier about being proud of who you are. I think, like, there's nothing wrong with, you know, being proud of your heritage and where you come from, but still wanting to be a better version of that. Yeah. Like, and I think that's okay. Like, if we aspire to be a better version of ourselves all the time, that whole 1% better every single day, we're all better off for it. It doesn't mean that we like ourselves any less before. It doesn't mean that we are embarrassed of who we are. It's just a growth projection. Yeah. It's just evolution. I think that's how everyone
Exactly. It's evolution. That's like one of the things I absolutely hate when people say things like, oh, you know, you shouldn't be mad at this person for speaking the way they do or having the mannerism they do because it is very typical of a Chinese person and blah, blah. And I get a lot of even family members back home, you know, say very ignorant things like that, like, oh, like, because I'm westernized now, like, I get very bothered if people don't hold the door or, you know, kind of simple things, which is very, very Western. It's not really something you have in Asia, but to me, it's like, okay, but it is always nicer when someone holds the door for you and someone says bless you and, you know, you clean up after yourself and you just have basic social, like, manners. And so to me, it's like, okay, yes, you can be proud of being Chinese, but that doesn't mean everything to do with China is 100% correct or right. Yeah. And that's what I really, really hate. Yeah. And Max and I had this conversation of, you know, friend of ours, on his podcast about basically what really is growth and wealth and evolution. And to me, it's like one of the great analogies is the most popular perfumes and colognes right now are by like major brands like MS, Dior, Gucci, but Chanel. Chanel, right? The famous Chanel No. 5, and everyone talks about that, but like, they're actually really bad quality.
Do you think? Oh my God, I've got Coco Mademoiselle on them right now.
Okay.
I love it.
I know. Don't get me wrong. I own Coco Mademoiselle as well. But they are actually really, really bad quality compared to, say, Emirati made perfumes. Because they were known for scent for centuries, right? And so, and they're more oil-based, so they last longer. And to me, it's like, okay, well, yes, you're kind of buying this stuff technically for the brand name, but if you were actually wealthy and, you know, you educated yourself, you understand actually the best thing to do is probably get one from, you know, an Emirati brand. Wow. It'll last you longer. Yeah. And it's like simple things like that I don't think the world has caught up to. Yeah. And it does upset me because I think, you know, sometimes even my own people, they can be very, very stubborn. And then I just don't think that the U.S. is, you know, 100% great on everything, trust me. I don't think China's great on everything. Hell, I definitely don't think the U.K. is great on everything. But I think everyone would do a lot better and benefit if they just were able to just get rid of their pride and take bits and pieces of the positives and kind of put them together.
So obviously, having that corporate law background has been useful to your business for loads of different ways. I know we want to talk about something that's happened to you in your business as well, which is obviously was a lot stressful for you and you learned a lot from. But how has being a corporate lawyer helped, like, running Sipzen?
I mean, it's helped in many ways. The biggest thing is how busy I am. Okay. I think a lot of, you know, startups fail. Like 80%, isn't it stats like 80% of startups fail within the first 5 years? And I think it's because a lot of people have an idea, but when you don't have a manager or like a regular 9 to 5, it's kind of hard to push yourself. Whereas for me, it's like, I need something to do. I'm like you. I have a lot of energy. I have a lot of thoughts. My head is constantly going around. And so I think having worked in law, I'm very good at kind of scheduling myself and managing my schedule and still staying healthy. And almost like the way I operate Sipzen is like I work it like it's a 9 to 7. Okay. And then that way I could still push myself to go to the gym in the morning and do things and be social on the weekends with my friends. And, you know, weekend is still separate from weekday, which I think a lot of startups don't have. Yes. And also, in general, just understanding the laws around things and how to protect myself. I mean, I wrote my own NDAs. I wrote, you know, all the shareholder, like, contracts. Like, that was all done by me, which also saved the company a lot of money. Because I don't know if you've heard this, but apparently it's like 20% of major startups all started by ex-lawyers.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Because it's, especially with FMCG, because the legal work is the most expensive part of a startup.
That's crazy.
And so, being able to do that stuff myself has been incredibly helpful. Have I had to use it in circumstances I wish I wasn't in? Yes. But for the most part, I think, it's taught me a lot about being organized. And also, I think, so I never, maybe it's because I was also a student athlete growing up. So, even at the age of 14, my hours ran from 6 a.m. for swim practice, and then school, and then cheer practice and diving practice. So I would be out from 6 to 10.
Wow. That's a lot for a teenager.
Oh, yeah. But it paid off. I absolutely loved what I did. And then, going into university, I didn't have that issue like a lot of people did leaving their parents where they couldn't handle their own schedule. And then, when I went to corporate, I think a lot of people took that first 2 years to adjust to the corporate schedule. I didn't really have an adjustment period because of my sports background. It was quite helpful. And now with Sipzen, I will say this, with Sipzen, I am the most free I've ever been my entire life.
Really?
I genuinely sometimes don't know what to do with my time.
How is that possible? I feel like every founder I know is always like scrambling for like time.
So this is the other thing, right? I don't think people are that busy. I think they're just disorganized.
I would say that, but I teach people productivity, and I do this, and I am busy. So, and I'm probably one of the most organized people that are.
But that's what But this is the thing. I never see you scrambling about.
No, I'm not.
Like, you're organized.
But I'm very busy.
Yeah, I am busy, but I also feel like because I'm used to coming home anywhere from 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. Now that I can have dinner at a normal time, I feel like, because I think most people have a 9 to 5, and then their 5 to 9 is kind of like their personal, figure out their workout and their eating time. Whereas I feel like now I have this weird 10 to 12 that I don't know what to do with.
Just chill then.
And weekends. And so I think because I'm so high energy my entire life and, high strung, and also I have ADHD, I can't fall asleep before a certain time.
It's your chronotype though. That's a lot of people. I'm the same.
Yeah, I operate easily on 4 to 5 hours of sleep.
Yeah, I wish I was, when I was your age, I was the same. So I'm saying don't count those blessings now, because when I was your age, I also used to say the same thing. I don't need much to sleep, and I learned the hard way. And I used to think that I was functioning on 4 to 5 hours of sleep. I used to feel amazing. I would wake up and I'm like, I am so productive today. But then I look back at the quality of work and it wasn't anywhere near that. So don't underestimate sleep. That's a big thing that I think people don't do. And you're already a health fan as well. I feel like sleep is a huge thing that you definitely don't want to underestimate, because I was the same. I was like 4 hours of sleep. I was talking about this the other day. I used to be, so it was even, I think about 9 years ago when I first got a WeWork office, and WeWork was kind of this cool vibe, open 24 hours. People be out, coming back from a night out, and I'd be still at my desk. Yeah. And I would be working so much, I didn't even realise the time. Sometimes I might have a quick nap on my sofa in my office, run down to the showers downstairs, have a shower, and then get back at my desk. Yeah. And I would do that every day. I'd have no sleep. And, I went to US for a couple of years. I came back. And when I came back, I was kind of in between my parents' house in Birmingham versus London. And I would be getting up at 4 a.m. to get on a train, 5 a.m. to go to London, and get back at midnight, and then do it all over again the next day. That's stupid. And that's nuts. And I feel like that's what I did as a normal thing. And so many people in the office were going, wow, you're an inspiration because you're doing that. And I did it.
That's toxic though.
It is, but I didn't realize at the time. Yeah. Because again, a long time ago, I was roughly your age in that sense. I didn't know that it was toxic. I just thought, I am getting to my desk at a time. I wasn't intending to do it all the time. I stayed in Birmingham because it was free rent, I was staying at my parents' house. London was expensive, but I ended up keep having clients in London. So I had meetings in London. I wanted to get to the office to be productive, meet people, and then do stuff. I didn't intend to do it every day. I intended to do it 2 times a week, maybe. And then I kept on getting meetings, and I kept on growing the business, and it kept on doing more and more things, and I had a team, and I grew, and it just became that. Obviously, just under a year I did that for, 10 months, which was ridiculous, and then I moved back to London because it was so silly. But I did that for so long, and people almost praised me for it in the office. Like I said, they thought it was a great thing. I was known as the most dedicated person. I worked really hard. And then I'd also be out drinking. So I'd do the same when I got to WeWork. Even when I decided to live in London, I'd be out drinking, and then I'd get to a meeting at 5 a.m. or whatever. Yeah. And it would just be really silly. But I did that for so many years, thinking it was completely fine. And didn't understand what burnout would look like, didn't understand any of that sort of stuff.
You know why? Because society told us it was good.
And it's fine. And it's like, hustle culture is a thing. Even if I didn't believe the bros, I just did that because I believed in working hard. And I didn't understand my body at the time. And I think that you can do it when you're under 30, perhaps, and your body is more robust. But my body quickly deteriorated and realised that, and my brain quickly deteriorated and realised that I couldn't cope anymore.
Well, I think that's what flared my illnesses.
Maybe,
especially with underactive thyroid, like stress can be a major push because it is genetic, but it often comes out, in your 30s and your 40s.
It's not always genetic. Hashimoto's is genetic, but not general hypothyroidism, because I had hyperthyroidism. I got prescribed with carbimazole, and then they gave me too much carbimazole, and it made me underactive.
Oh, gee.
And they would not give me thyroxine to counteract that, because it was dangerous, because I was previously hyper. So I had underactive thyroid for years with no help, because they won't be able to treat it. And so therefore it wasn't genetic, it was just something I developed.
But it makes it worse with cortisol, so your stress hormone.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, my stress hormones were flaring. And I've always been quite petite. Obviously, I was a student athlete. I really, really small, quite healthy lifestyle, always ate clean. And then 2 years into, working full time, out of university. Also, I was going to school still. I was doing a master's along with working. And I gained 12 kilograms in a matter of about 4 months. It was quite bad. And then, started the TCM process, and the weight basically just dropped. It's just unfortunate. I feel like I'm left with scars.
So if we just drink this, will the weight just drop off me? Can I just
Okay, no claims on that.
I'm just gonna keep drinking it.
I will say this, one of the hardest things going from corporate to startup is I can be very busy or I can be very free. It's a constant curve. And that is difficult because I like consistency in my life. I like knowing exactly what time I'm going to the gym, what my routine is, basically an order to my life from Monday to Friday. And I just feel like I don't have that. I mean, granted, I say that, but in corporate I didn't either, because I would randomly work on a Saturday and Sunday all the time. But at least it was, someone else was handling my little things, scheduling meetings, and my bills were just on this recurring payments and whatnot. But now I feel like I'm not only managing my own life and staying sane in my personal life, but also managing other people. And that is the hard part as well, is my schedule isn't consistent because I am dependent on people who are not under the same company name. I'm dependent on myself chasing them. And, with startups, you work a lot with freelancers. And sometimes because there is no HR, there is no, centralized office, it can be very difficult, and things get delayed all the time, as you know, because you run so many, startups and charities. That part has been very hard. I've never been in an environment where things got delayed so much, and I worked in politics. And I feel like where I am now with life is so inconsistent. Wow. But I'm really happy.
Well, that's good. Yeah, so that's perfect that you're happy, at least. That's the main thing about it. But I want to go back to some of the bullshit that you've been through, because, oh my God, I know that you've had so much stress. And this is so in tune with, obviously, what I talk about. I run a creative agency, I do marketing, and I know there's so much bullshit out there.
Yeah.
The name of our agency is literally Knobs Agency. It's the no bullshit agency for this exact reason, because there's so much bullshit in the marketing world. And unfortunately, you had to go through it. And I want to talk about what that was like, as a startup, with a startup that, you know, you're conscious of doing the right thing, you're being sustainable, you are trying to have a quality brand, and you want the best for Sipzen, but you had to go through this bullshit, and thankfully you're a lawyer, so it helped. But talk us through what happened.
Yeah, so basically, I've never been a social media person, and, you know, we have each other on social media, and, you know, my page is blank. I basically use it as a WhatsApp, and I didn't know where to start. I don't even honestly know how to use my iPhone like camera correctly with all the features. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna go all out, because otherwise I'm just not gonna bother if I'm not gonna give my 100%. And I wanted, you know, Sipzen looks beautiful. I wanted to give it everything it deserves. So I decided to hire a digital marketing company. And I did do my due diligence, or what I thought was my due diligence. I spoke to former clients. I asked them for case studies of, you know, their former clients and projects that they worked on. They very much manipulated me, and had me come into this fancy office space that they had rented for the day. It was like 3 managing directors, and, you know, this whole thing. And they are a registered company on Companies House, etc. But about a few months into my 6-month contract with them, I realized that absolutely nothing was being done. And whenever I did chase them, it was quite clear it was content that was created via iPhone, which frankly I could have done myself or asked a friend. I didn't have to pay them, you know, like nearly 5 figures. And then one of their employees, who was my account manager, essentially called me one day because I was sending angry, legal, threatening emails like every week to them for about 2 months. And then they kept changing their registered office location. Like it was getting very, very dodgy. But it was weird because part of my due diligence, I obviously looked into the founder. And this guy has been featured on like Daily Mail for, you know, running this like mental health charity marathon. And he had a massive following himself. And it was all this stuff that made it look like he knew what he was doing. And also, when someone tells you who they have on their client list, you don't assume that they're lying, because that's so illegal. But turns out he lied about all of them, and he was actually a career criminal. So one of his employees called me and said, you know, I really, really love Sipzen, and I love working with you. You've been like, despite me obviously working for a digital marketing company that you're really mad at, you've taken me on kind of as like a little intern, and I really appreciate it, and I love, you know, that we're both women. And so she was kind of like being like, she was flattering me. And I was like, okay, what do you want? And, you know, she kind of whistle blew and just spilled everything, and was like, you know, I think it's a fraud company. Obviously, I get paid, but my paychecks are weird. I don't have I've been asking for my pension account for months, and I don't have it. I've gotten warning letters that I haven't paid back my student loans, even though I opted in, which is all things are taken care of by your payroll. And so I was like, okay, this doesn't sound right. Like, this sounds like major fraud scheme. And so then I spoke to another former employee, and it was the same thing. And then I spoke to an employee that was from like 2 years prior, and he had actually sued this founder, etc., and won, but never got his money back because the UK courts don't actually help you claim the money back, which sucks, whereas in the States it turns into a warrant. And so I started really digging into this guy. And then I also asked, you know, these whistleblowing employees, I was like, can you do me a favor and send me a list of all current clients? And there was about 18. Spoke to every single one of them. None of them had received any content.
How is he getting away with all that?
This is what I mean. And like, I thought I was bad. He owed me $8,500. There were some people he somehow schemed like 50 grand out of. Like there was one guy who, you know, ran this, like had his own brand for bikes and had a storefront. And the founder had essentially told him that, you know, on top of digital marketing, I also do storefront design. 6 months in, this guy's never even been to the store.
Oh my God.
Complete career criminal. And then so I started digging into more because when you register on Companies House, you need to have your passport ready.
Yeah.
And so any company you are ever a shareholder or director of, it comes up under your name.
Yeah.
So I basically had multiple tabs open and searched his name multiple times. And somehow this guy has like 5 accounts on Companies House under the same name and birthday. How he's managed to do that, I don't know. But it was very sus. So I just started gathering evidence. I spoke to every single company that wanted to sue him. And then I realized that when I signed with them, the 2 case studies they sent me were this wellness powder brand, which is actually quite big right now. And, they're available on things like health, and I think they've done like Selfridges pop-ups, and this other brand which is also quite big and is basically a beef-based protein bar. And they're all over Amazon and I think Holland and Barrett. So major brands. I reached out to the founders of the brands and I explained the situation and I was like, can I have a conversation with you because your name is part of this. You're the reason I signed. So I need to know what is going on here. And they were really, just willing to speak. And I got onto a call with them and they basically said, first off, like I've never had a business meeting where so many people cussed. But essentially, these companies, when they first started out like 5-6 years ago, had also hired him under a different agency name. And they had also sued him for not doing anything. But so then they, took the loss of that money that they paid him, hired someone else, like a freelancer, to complete what they completed. And this guy literally took their case study, like actually took like a full downloaded copy of their website and photoshopped his logo onto it. So it was complete fraud.
So it was someone else's work?
Yeah, so I ended up sharing my screen and showing them all the email transactions I had with this company, how they were doing marketing for them, and they were all like, no, none of this was done by them. This was done after we sued them, after we, rescinded our contract and gone to court, and this was completely a different agency's work, and they literally just downloaded it and photoshopped their logo. And so then I find out that, so I then made a spreadsheet because I went to full like CIA mode. Yeah. I was like, you took my money, you messed with my child, which is Sipzen, I'm angry now. So I made a spreadsheet of all the companies, how much they paid, what is owed, etc. And I realized this guy was cashing in on about $250,000 every 6 months.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and he wasn't paying his workers their pensions, their student loans, any of their taxes. So they weren't like registered for taxes.
What?
It was awful. And so, with all of that, because I also told him, I was like, tell me how much each of you make. And how much has actually been paid into your tax account. And that's when they logged in and realized it was like zero. And that there was like bailiff letters out for them for their student loans. And they had no idea. And so with all of that, and obviously he must have been lying to HMRC, et cetera, I, made a full spreadsheet taking everything into consideration. This guy was raking in $250,000 every 6 months. He was renting an 8-bed house to himself in Oxfordshire, driving a Range Rover. I mean, I don't know if it's real or not, but like wearing Rolexes, going to Soho House, like all of this stuff. And so I said, okay, enough is enough. Someone's got to stop him. He's clearly been doing this for like at least 10 years. Also, I think he's also managed to somehow fool Companies House with his birth year, because apparently he's my age. And I'm telling you, if he's my age,
he's aged badly.
I should be thanking the gods. So then I knew something was wrong. I basically sent him a warning letter saying, I figured out everything you've done and I am going to make this a big thing if you don't pay everyone their money back. And I had hired debt collectors and like everyone possible to knock down his door. And he basically just ignored everything and then told us that there was no way we could get our money back because he is planning to liquidate. And Yeah, and so it was a creditor's problem. But then I called the creditors myself.
So he did actually go through the liquidation?
No, so this is the fun part. This is where it gets even more fun. He had started the process with the creditors in order for us to all leave him alone. And including his former employees, because he was owing them months worth of salary. Like, he didn't pay this one guy for about 6 months. And he just kept saying, oh, I'll pay you next month, I'll pay you next month. And then he liquidated. But then I called the creditors a month into the liquidation. And in order for the actual liquidation process to start, they must fill out this like form by the creditors. Yeah. They never got back to the creditors. They only signed the contract saying, we're going to use you guys as our creditors, but they never gave them any content.
So they only did it so that the liquidators would act on their behalf, so therefore they didn't have to deal with all you guys.
Yeah, but at the same time, they didn't actually go into the process, so they never paid the liquidators either.
Oh my God.
So it was like a whole thing. So I thought, okay, regardless if there's money to get back, I need like a court ruling. In case of anything, if there's somehow just any asset to take from his car, his house, whatever it is, I need to figure this out. So I took them to court, sued them myself, did everything myself. I also helped, the other companies that were involved as well, and we basically all received our court rulings in favor of us. But I think he's fled to Portugal.
Oh my God, so after all this, he's got away with it?
I think so. Oh
my God.
But I mean, I'm still in the process of seeking other, ways around to get to him. And I still need an update from the creditors if there was any assets that they managed to get a hold of. But the whole thing was just incredibly weird. And it did also upset me and make me wonder why me, a 28-year-old, foreigner, was the only one of how many companies he frauded to actually speak up and get everyone's together.
I think it's the foreigner thing. I think in this country we kind of brush it off. If it's under 50K, people just don't care, and that's why people get away with it. It's a lot of effort to go through the courts, and as you said, the courts don't help us get the money back, so we don't bother half the time. We just, because I know I've taken people to court and I've won and I still don't get any money. Yeah. So I think that's part of the reason.
Yeah.
So it's a shame that after all this though, that this guy's run away with it. I feel like if anyone's interested, they should DM us and get his name, and they could be TikTok detectives.
Yeah, and there's no way he can deny it because he stupidly had it tattooed, the logo tattooed on his arm.
Oh my God, wow, he's intense, this guy.
Yeah, but I will say, I'm glad to finally almost stop him in a way, because all he did previously was rebrand his company.
Yeah, but he might be doing the same thing in a
He might be doing it again, but at least now all of us have our court judgments, and so we are still able to go after him. But yeah, it was awful, and frankly, I feel the worst for his former employees. They were completely fooled, and also it was quite obvious that he was hiring very, very young females straight out of university who come from backgrounds where unfortunately not everyone's parents teach them about pensions, etc. So they had no idea that they were losing thousands of pounds.
There are a lot of marketing agencies out there run by guys who only hire attractive young females and exploit them and manipulate them, and it's really, really sad. And also, like you said, he had loads of PR about him, and it just shows you can pay to put yourself into these situations, to have followers, to have all these things. You can fake everything. You can fake your testimonies, fake your case studies, fake your audience, and it's just a shame that it's so easy to kind of bullshit your way through things, which is why I make this content, which is why I kind of do these channels, because I want to basically help people realize this is not okay.
I think the biggest thing, and you know what, it goes back to our conversation earlier about why I became a lawyer. Learn to protect yourself, especially if you're a female. Genuinely learn to protect yourselves. And you know what? It has, law has genuinely come in handy for me in so many more ways outside of even work. And so, I mean, I'm not saying everyone has to go to law school, but especially if you're female, just be a bit more mindful. It's tiring, but you just have to be a bit more mindful. Expose people, call them out, and just stand up for yourself.
Well, amazing. Thank you so much of everything you've shared today. I feel like it's been so helpful to the audience. So if people want to come find you, where they look you up?
The best place is probably our Instagram. So it's Sipzen_drinks. And then we also have our website, which is drinksipzen.com.
Amazing. I'll put those both in the description below and the show notes. And then, it'd be great to...
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much for coming on. Thanks.